Hi everybody, today I would like to talk to you about the relationship between yoga, resilience and the vagus nerve. This presentation will make you look at the practice of yoga from a different perspective. The long-time yogis will discover further scientific confirmation supporting their personal experiences, while newbies and skeptics will have the opportunity to approach yoga with fresh eyes and greater openness. Here is the agenda for today's presentation. We will start with a brief introduction to the concept of resilience and yoga as a discipline. Then we will go through an overview on the nervous system to move on to the Polyvagal Theory and the role of the vagus nerve in our practice. And finally, we will analyze the results from some recent studies carried out on the yoga practices. Under resilience, we mean our capability to adapt to everyday changes, such as to react effectively to complex events that occur in our lives. History is full of people who, following difficult or traumatic events in their lives, found the necessary inner energy to get back on their feet, face adversities, and revitalize their existence. Is there a possible connection between yoga and the way we deal with events occurring in our lives? And how is it possible to quantify the effects of such a broad and boundless practice? Resilience allows you to adapt to adversities, to overcome a stressful, acute or chronic situation, and restore or improve the psychophysical balance prior to the stress. When we speak of resilience, we refer to the capability to find the necessary resources to reorganize our lives in a practical way. Change is the only constant in life. Stress is not intrinsically negative, and it should be seen rather as a training to deal with the endless challenges we have to overcome in the course of our lives. Stress can then be classified in two categories. Eustress, that is the body's ultimate response to the environment and its demands, where the level of tension and stimulation is suitable to reach the goal. And distress, when the adaptive response is compromised by an excessive psychophysical activation. When we are exposed to the stressful situations, our body responds through a series of adaptive reactions, known as general adaptation syndrome, that act at different levels, like neurophysical, emotional, locomotive, hormonal, or immunological. The adaptation is aimed at reaching a new balance level. Therefore, it is possible to change the body inner balance, that means the homeostasis, by producing an emotional response that depends on the single individual, or by resorting to the body's natural defense to counteract the source of stress, or by implementing strategies to counteract any future source of stress. And it is possible also to change the body's outer balance, that means the environment, to adapt it to the single individual needs. Stress is often associated with performances, and as you can see, the curve between stress and performances shows an inverse relationship. If the stress level is perceived as low, performances are low as well. However, if the stress level is high and constant, and is not supported by the individual's capability to adapt to changes, this stress takes over and performances are dramatically reduced. Several factors help to develop resilience. Believing in oneself, be optimistic and confident, be aware of your emotions, willing to adapt and embrace flexibility, and develop self-control, show problem-solving skills, engage in networking to gain support, and show a sense of humor. Yoga is not only about physical positions, stretching, or aesthetic forms. Yoga encompasses a series of practices classified for the first time by Patanjali in his work Yoga Sutra, dating back to the 2nd century before the Common Era. The practices described have been named the 8 stages of yoga and include personal and common ethic guidelines, physical postures, breathing control, reduction of sensory input, concentration, meditation, and alignment. Yoga is better defined as a systematic, active practice based on a daily experience rather than a philosophy. Therefore, it is possible to consider those 8 stages as a precise method to control emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in order to improve our physical status. The physical positions, the controlled breathing, and the meditation enable to gain important benefits at various levels: psychological, physiological, cognitive, behavioral. Let's go briefly through the main features of the nervous system to introduce then the key role of the vagus nerve in the practice of yoga. Alright, so the nervous system consists of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system includes the brain and the spinal cord that supervise the main control and processing functions for the information coming from the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system connects the body extremities to the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, in turn, consists of the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is also known as a voluntary and enables to transfer the signals to the skeletal muscles. It is that same system involved also in instantaneous reflexes, as when we get too close to a flame and got burned. The autonomic nervous system includes a variety of involuntary reactions resulting from 3 types of systems: sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, and the enteric nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system activates in dangerous situations and implies a physical and mental response at high energy expenditure that stimulates a series of visceral organs like vessels, heart, lungs, glands, while inhibiting others like stomach, bladder, intestine. In that way, the organism sets in a state of general activation suitable for the fight escape, the so-called flight and fight mode. When the danger is perceived and is escaped, the parasympathetic nervous system activates to reach the same organs innervated by the orthosympathetic system, mainly through the vagus nerve fibers, and trigger mostly opposite effects. Its calming effects replaces the stimulating one from the orthosympathetic system. The muscles relax, and the cardiac and respiratory activity readjust to the basal rest values, while the mechanisms of energy recovery and tissue repair and regeneration get going. The parasympathetic nervous system activation is associated to a response known as rest and digest. The enteric nervous system consists of about 500 million neurons, a number comparable to that of the spinal cord. This system is defined also second brain. It modifies its response based on the mass of ingested food and the composition of the nutrients. The enteric nervous system is connected to the central nervous system through parasympathetic and orthosympathetic efferences. Since most organs in the viscera receive input from both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system, the autonomic nervous system adjustment is modulated as a balanced system. Let's have a look at the vagus nerve now. The vagus nerve originates in the brainstem at the medulla and innervates all the organs of our body, the gastrointestinal tract, the respiratory tract, etc., including the heart. As shown in the picture, the majority of the parasympathetic innervation comes from the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve features different branches. In particular, the 80% of the vagal fibers are afferent fibers. That means electrical signals from outside towards the central nervous system. The remaining fibers are of efferent type. That means from the central nervous system towards the peripheral one. Such a configuration enables a feedback dynamic process between the control cerebral centers and the organs that is aimed at controlling the homeostasis. The primary motor fibers originate into distinct nuclei, the dorsal nucleus of vagus and the nucleus ambiguus. The vagus originating from the dorsal motor nucleus is known as vegetative vagus and is the oldest part in terms of evolution. The vegetative vagus connects to the heart through unmyelinated neurons. That means without shed, that conduct the electric signals at lower speed and do not carry any respiratory rhythm. Therefore, this part of the vagus nerve is involved in the digestion and respiratory vegetative functions. The vagus nerve that originates in the nucleus ambiguus is known as smart vagus, and evolutionally speaking is the most recent part. The smart vagus is supplied with myelinated efferent fibers, that mean with sheath, that control the respiratory rate, innervating heart, soft palate, pharynx, larynx, and esophagus, and plays an important role in the processes associated to movement, emotions, and communication, aspects that fall within the mammal typical social and survival behaviors. The two vagal nuclei work independently from each other. Alright, so let's introduce now the polyvagal theory and the role that the vagus nerve plays in our routines. The polyvagal theory was developed in 1994 by the American neuropsychiatrist Stephen Porges. Porges redefines the system functioning by focusing on the vagus nerve role. According to the classic theory, the autonomic nervous system that works independently from our will consists of two antagonist systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. Those two systems alternate, thus enabling a fluctuation between activation in case of threats, sympathetic system, and quiet, parasympathetic system, in a dynamic balance. During the day, there is therefore an alternation between the two that is dependent on the tasks that we are take care of. According to Porges' theory, the parasympathetic system consists of the dorsal vagal system and the smart vagal system, backing up the sympathetic system. In case of danger, the dorsal vagal system triggers a behavior leading to freezing. The smart vagal system triggers a behavior rest and digest-like, leading to rest. In case of danger, the sympathetic system triggers a flight and fight response, leading to fight or escape. Each system acts both at physical and behavioral level. Porges regards the vagus nerve as a social engagement system. The vagus nerve activation depends on what happens in the outside world. So let's analyze in details how the three systems works. When the environment is perceived as safe, the smart vagal system prevails, inhibiting the sympathetic and the dorsal vagal systems, and encouraging social interaction, communications, facial expression, and empathy. When the environment is perceived as non-safe, there are two options. If you have the chance to escape or to fight back, the vagal brake gets uninhibited, and the adrenergic sympathetic system activates, triggering the flight and fight response. If such response persists over time, non-functional hyperarousal reactions will arise, such as uncontrollable fear or panicking. When the environment is perceived as non-safe and there are no chance to escape or fight back, human beings, as well animals, activate the old vagal path, the dorsal vagal system, leading to immobilization, like freeze response. So the Porges polyvagal theory is based on MacLean's model, according to which our brain is triune, that consists of neocortex, limbic system, reptilian complex. The reptilian complex is the oldest one that is responsible for instinctual behaviors associated to survival, such as procreation, feeding, aggression, or flight. The limbic system plays a role in processing emotions, as well as in motivation, learning, and memory. It corresponds to an evolved brain step in mammals. The neocortex is the most evolved brain step and receives information from outside as the opposite from the inside, like the old cortex, thus using eyes, ears, and somatic receptors. In humans, it is home to awareness, language, perception of space and time, and abstraction. The polyvagal theory offers a different interpretation of how the autonomic nervous system works when triggered to face challenges or threats. There are no longer two antagonist systems, that means the sympathetic one and the parasympathetic one, but three progressive levels that activate depending on the danger severity. The polyvagal theory reconstructs the phylogenetic framework, that means the evolutionary stages through which the autonomic nervous system developed in animals and therefore in human beings. The vagal tone activation allows to increase attention and make the social behavior more spontaneous. A reduced vagal tone triggers a fight or flight-like reaction that makes it difficult to control feelings and gestures and to express emotions suitable for the situation. The polyvagal theory regards social interactions and emotions as biological and behavioral processes rather than psychological ones, claiming that our physiological status has a deep influence on the psychological process quality and that our emotions can lead to dynamic changes in our physiology. Porges' social engagement theory suggests that the socialization phenomena depend on the myelinated vagus good operation. The smart vagus supports self-adjusting and the ability to calm down, while inhibiting the sympathetic input on the heart. The possibility to modulate the vagal tone can therefore increase the individual's capacity of self-adjusting. The vagal tone activity is measured through the heart rate variability in milliseconds, HRV. The higher the heart rate variability, and the more efficient the action in the vagus nerve. A high HRV corresponds to a high vagal tone. You will feel welcomed, motivated to develop social relationships, and empathetic and punchy. A low HRV corresponds to a low vagal tone. You will perceive the world as threatening and feeling capable to react to the stimuli from outside. In such a situation, you are inclined to adopt the so-called better safe than sorry approach, leading to a propensity for the worse, which results in hypervigilance, intrusive thinking, and interruption of social interactions. Let's analyze now the relationship between the practice of yoga and the vagus nerve activation. We took into consideration 4 scientific researches. The first research is a review concerning the relationship between yoga and the heart rate variability. The second research focuses on the parasympathetic system modulation through yoga, in particular the Iyengar style. The third research analyzes the impact of pranayama on the heart rate variability. The fourth research highlights the connection between resilience and the heart rate variability. Okay, let's see the first research. In the first research, they analyzes 59 studies involving a total of 2,358 participants. The majority of studies were performed in India on small groups of people. 15 out of the review studies were randomized controlled trials, with 6 having a JADA score of 3 on a scale from 1 to 5. And the JADA scale is a criterion to assess the cogency of a systematic review. The HRV was measured considering the R2R peak of an ECG. So let's see the results. The vagal tone of people practicing yoga regularly is higher compared to people who do not, sedentary people, and people who engage regularly in aerobic activities. Yoga increases the vagal tone and inhibits the sympathetic activity of people suffering from chronic heart diseases. Yoga has a positive effect on the mood and the perceived energy level, thus improving the neuroendocrine, metabolic, cognitive, and immunological response. Further studies are still necessary to better specify each type of yoga practice and the related respiratory changes associated to it. Let's move on to the second research. This one involved 11 yoga practitioners, 7 women and 4 men, who took a 90 minutes yoga session per week for 5 consecutive weeks. 2 sessions included practices created by Master Iyengar and aimed at relieving heart problems. During that yoga class, the participants wore a heart halter, which they kept for 24 hours. And the results obtained were compared with the ones from a healthy group that did not take part to any relaxing practices. The heart rate variability parameters were then measured every hour by an operator in double blind. That means that the operator didn't know any information that could invalidate the results. So let's see the results. The relaxation gain through yoga practicing was associated to an increased modulation of the vagus nerve activity. The researchers suggest that the method used can be applied to rehabilitate the physical status of people suffering from heart problems. Quite interesting, isn't it? Let's move to the third research, and it involved 30 students aged 17 to 21. The participants were asked to practice a specific breathing technique known as Anuloma Viloma for 25 minutes a day and for a period of 3 months. The heart rate variability was measured at the beginning of the study and then in the 6th and the 12th week. The researchers collected the heart parameters of high frequency, low frequency, and a ratio. They observed an increase in the high frequency components. That therefore implies an increase in the parasympathetic activity, and a reduction in the low-frequency components, which translates in a low activity of the sympathetic system. Let's move to the fourth research. This one links the resilience with the heart rate variability. Traditionally, the heart rate variability is measured through psychometric tests. Although effective, such evaluation methods can be subject to voluntary or involuntary manipulation by the compilers. The researchers explored the possibility to use a more reliable and objective biological marker to detect the resilience level. Therefore, they focused their attention on the variability rate. Recent studies link resilience with cortical thickness. Carl and his colleagues demonstrated that a poor resilience can be associated with a reduced cortical thickness. Therefore, there is a direct relationship between resilience level and cortical thickness and volume. The researchers carried out by Carnevali's team highlighted at the same time a relationship between cortex thickness, in particular the anterior cingulate, and the heart rate variability. Such results support the existence of a relationship between resilience, cerebral cortex, and heart rate variability rate. To recap, all researches carried out with yoga practitioners showed an increase of their heart rate variability. A high heart rate variability is therefore to be seen as a herald of a higher resilience. That means a higher capacity to adapt in stressful situations. At behavioral level, we observed also stronger empathy and improved capacity to communicate and acknowledge, adjust, and share one's emotions. At a physical level, we observed a better balance in glucose levels, a reduction of chronic inflammations and of the effects of cardiovascular diseases, and an improved function of the group hypothalamus pituitary adrenal glands. They are mainly responsible for the individual stress response in case of danger. Although further researches are to be carried out to guarantee higher qualitative standards, We can say that the indications gained up until now are sufficient to associate yoga with a greater resilience through the activation of the vagus nerve. Yoga is a complex word involving physical and mental training that enables remarkable physical benefits, increased awareness of oneself, and therefore an improved emotional and motivational adjustment. So thank you for your attention. Enjoy the practice. If you have any further question or any curiosity, just send me an email, and hope to see you soon on the mat. Thank you and see you soon. Ciao.